This anime tells the story of a young man named Yuki, who is sent to another world by a girl named Ames, which is Yuki's party team, decides that an elf girl named Kokoro is on a mission by her village head to serve the envoy from Ames. It turns out that Ames' messenger that Kokoro has to serve is Yuki. Then Kokoro saves Yuki, who is being attacked by a pack of wolves. When he wakes up, it turns out that Yuki has amnesia or has lost his memory, knowing that Kokoro wholeheartedly takes care of Yuki. When the two of them tried to train their strength, but ridiculously Yuki was attacked by wolves there, Kokoro repeatedly saved him. On the one hand, a human girl named Pecorin meets two young men named Charlie and Itachi, in which the two of them asked Pecorin to help bring medicine for Itachi, who was lying ill. But when they were about to give the medicine to them, Itachi and Charlie even took away the sword from Pecorin. Sometime later, Yuki and Kokoro arrived in the Landisol Kingdom. There the two of them looked for food and a place to rest. Then while resting again, Yuki was again kidnapped by a pack of wolves. This made Kokoro save Yuki again because their finances were running low. Yuki and Kokoro carried out several available quests in the city to supplement their income. Then their first quest is to collect mushrooms in the ruins. Both enjoyed their quest to collect mushrooms. While gathering mushrooms, they found a hungry Pecorin, and while enjoying their meal they were attacked by a mushroom monster. They also fought fiercely against the mushroom monsters there. Seeing Kokoro and Pecorin cornered, Yuki accidentally activates her powers to increase their abilities. That made Kokoro and Pecorin's strength increase many times. Then they managed to catch up with all the mushroom monsters there. Finally, thanks to Pecorin's help, Yuki and Kokoro can complete the quest. After returning to the inn, Kokoro, who saw Yuki practicing hard, thought of inviting Pecorin to be her team. When they were going to look for Pecorin, they met a Pecorin who was having an eating contest, where it turns out that Pecorin is often hungry because he uses attributes that can increase his strength. Therefore, Pecorin is often hungry. Then the three of them are looking for the person who brought away the Pecorin sword. Suddenly they are attacked by a pig monster, which turns out to be controlled by a cat girl named Carl, who aims to kill Pecorin. Then Pecorin easily managed to defeat the pig monster. Then they found Carl, who had fainted, crushed by the body of the pig monster he had just defeated. Carl is so shocked that he is being treated by Pecorin, who is his enemy. Carl chose to leave them. On the one hand, Charlie and Itachi, who were carrying swords from Pecorin, were suddenly kidnapped by a large dragon. Carl, who knew that Charlie and Itachi carried Pecorin's sword, then reported it to Pecorin. Arriving at the dragon's lair, Kokoro and Yuki along with Pecorin then rescued Charlie and Itachi and took the Pecorin sword. Yuki tries to lure the dragon, but instead, Yuki is devoured by the dragon. It was on that occasion that Pecorin and Kokoro fought to defeat the dragon there. But on the one hand, Carl controls the dragon to kill Pecorin. After struggling hard, finally the dragon was defeated by Pecorin. As a result, the dragon even attacked Carl. But Pecorin again managed to save Carl and defeat the dragon. This irritates and fascinates Carl even more, as he is repeatedly saved by Pecorin. Since then, Charlie and Itachi have become good friends with Pecorin because Pecorin managed to save them. On the one hand, Carl gets orders from his superiors to keep an eye on Pecorin. This made Carl keep an eye on Pecorin, who was working at a restaurant. However, Yuki and Kokoro find out about his actions. On that occasion, Kokoro invites Pecorin and Carl to form a team, but Carl flatly refused, and that made him even more annoyed with them. Then suddenly the figure of a Burai appears, who is a city thug who forces the restaurant to give him his most delicious food, if you don't want the restaurant to be closed. Pecorin, who saw Burai acting rudely to the owner of the restaurant, finally tried hard to cook for Burai. Burai was shocked by the delicious Pecorin dishes, but jokingly still insisted on closing the restaurant. Out of frustration, Pecorin beat Burai black and blue. After that, Carl was willing to join Kokoro's party team and others, which is where their team aims to find food ingredients and enjoy them. Finally, Kokoro and the team have a home because they have made a party. But how surprised they were that the house they occupied was very dirty and even had lots of insects and snakes. Like it or not, they work together to clean the house they are going to live in. On one hand, Kokoro goes to the capital to buy the equipment they need. There he met many traders, one of which was named Sharon, who was an administrator for an orphanage in the capital. Then Suzume, who is Sharon's maid, helps Kokoro to carry her stuff. Because they were engrossed in chatting, Suzume and Kokoro got lost in the forest, and the donkey pulling the carriage ran away too. Then they were surprised by an old human figure named Rima. Finally, Rima was willing to help pull their carriage and carry their belongings. When Kokoro and Suzume were walking, they were intercepted by a group of bandits. Rima, who were annoyed with the bandits, managed to beat them up. It turns out that when Rima eats an apple, Rima will turn into a very beautiful girl. Arriving Kokoro at home, that's where the beginning of their adventure begins. At night, Yuki had a very high fever. Because Yuki's fever was getting worse, they took him to the hospital, but they were very surprised to find doctors and nurses in the city like magicians, plus the hospital looked like a prison. Unexpectedly, they met Barui there, a person who caused trouble at the restaurant. Their Barui told me that the place was not a hospital, but a prison. Then they tried to save Yuki from there. Kokoro also manages to create smoke that distracts Eriko. It was on that occasion that Pecorin and Carl tried to save Yuki, but both of them were cornered because at the same time the doctor and Eriko arrived. Finally, Yuki and Pecorin managed to escape from there after Carl became bait. Carl, who was caught, was eventually used as experimental material by the doctors there. Sometime later, Carl was back home with a very shocked face. When he meets the healer, it turns out that Yuki's disease has been cured. It turns out that the hospital that looks like a prison is indeed the hospital that managed to cure Yuki. The next day they went on a quest to harvest spices in Targum village. They also embark on an adventure together after resting. Again, Yuki was kidnapped by monsters. It made Yuki's partner go into shock. But luckily Yuki was saved by an elf girl named Oi. After being guided by Oi, finally Yuki and the others arrived at the Targum village. On the one hand, it turns out that Rima's team is on their way to Pangung village to carry out the same quest. But suddenly a shadowy figure appears who looks like them, which turns out to be the shadow trying to take over the soul and body. As a result, there was a fierce battle between them, and in the end, Rima's party team suffered defeat after a girl named Christina appeared and attacked them. Zio, who is weakened due to a relapse of his illness, is possessed by his own shadow. In another place, Hatsune, who is still in the same party team as Rima, is also waiting for her sister's arrival at Pargam village. Yuki starts the quest by harvesting spices there, but suddenly party Rima's team has arrived there. Rima then told him everything and said that Zio was lost somewhere. Finally, Hatsune was assisted by Kuroko and Yuki in finding Zio's whereabouts, while Carl, who knows that the mastermind behind this is all his superiors, chooses not to interfere. And sure enough, the shadow is the work of Kaiser, the princess of the Landisal kingdom who deliberately causes trouble in her territory. While looking for Zio, how surprised was Hatsune that Zio had the heart to attack her. In the end, a duel between the two of them occurred which made Hatsune cornered. On the one hand, Carl pomegranate about what to do, considering it was all the work of his superiors. In his anxiety, Pecorin always comforted him that Carl had always been cheerful and kind. Suddenly, a shadow attack arrived at Targum village and attacked the residents. Seeing that, Pecorin helps the residents to save themselves, while Yuki and the others face Christina who tries to beat them. Yuki and the others were completely overwhelmed by Christina's powerful figure. Then at that time, Ames lent his strength to Yuki, so Yuki brought out his skills that made the strength of his friends increase many times over. This of course made Christina cornered by their attack because cornered Christina finally told them that Zio was possessed by a shadow figure and they had to defeat the shadow figure. Carl, who saw that Pecorin was getting weak, finally decided to help him. Hatsune also came and brought her forehead closer to Zio. Inside Zio, Hatsune tried to pull her soul from the grip of the shadow that possessed her. Shortly after the shadow made it out, Carl attacked the shadow until it was destroyed. With that finally, Zio was able to wake up and they all managed to save the village. Next, Yuki's party team carried out a quest to plant rice and drive away birds that ate rice in the fields. Aboard, Carl asked them to do a more profitable quest for them. On the one hand, it seems that if you often report what has happened to Kaiser, Kaiser admits it. While looking for a more profitable quest, they got the quest to become a teacher for Junior's party team. At that time, they also met 3 children who turned out to be giving the quest to Yuki's party team. Seeing the 3 children insisting, Yuck, who can't refuse, accepts them. The next day, Yuki helped the 3 children look for treasure based on the map prepared by Yuki and his friends. But unfortunately, Yuki gave the 3 children the wrong way, until Kokoro and the others tried hard to help defeat the monsters that were blocking Yuki and the 3 children's path. Elsewhere, Pecorin disguises himself as a monster to direct Yuki and the 3 children, but instead gets beaten up by the 3 children. Unfortunately, Yuki is again kidnapped by a bird monster there. So the 3 children tried to save him, but they were beaten up by the bird monster. So inevitably Kokoro and the others came down to help them. Pecorin, who had managed to get out of his monster clothes, then attacked the bird monster to a pulp. Finally, the 3 children and Yuki survived there and got a pet bird that hatched there. One day, Pecorin accidentally broke Carl's favorite doll. Carl, who was cranky, asked Pecorin to compensate, and finally, Kokoro, who was good at sewing, together with Yuki and Pecorin looked for materials to sew Carl's dolls in the capital. But after searching, they did not find the material. Unexpectedly, when Yuki was looking for materials, he met a shadow that tried to attack the residents. Yuki, who was cornered, was rescued by a girl named Shizuru, who is Yuki's older sister. On the one hand, there is also a Yuki named Rino. There they understand if Yuki doesn't remember them. It turns out that all this time Shizuru and Rino have been watching Yuki from afar along with their master named Labyrus to investigate the cause of the appearance of a shadowy figure in the middle of the city. On the one hand, Carl brought flowers to his boss, very surprised to find that Kaiser was planning to attack the city by sending a very strong shadow. It also makes the flowers Carl brought wither, and the emperor rejects the flowers. Carl became very sad when Kokoro was about to take water. Suddenly Rino approached Kokoro. which is where Reno is very jealous of Kokoro's closeness to Yuki. That's where Kokoro explains everything. On the one hand, Kokoro was also very surprised to meet Yuki's two brothers. When they wanted to meet, it turned out that Yuki had disappeared. They thought Yuki was kidnapped by a shadowy figure. When they continued to search, they finally managed to find Yuki, who was carrying out a quest to take silk thread from a butterfly monster for material for Carl's dolls. When he came home, Carl was very happy to see his favorite doll that had been successfully repaired. Shadow monsters sent by Kaiser began to move by continuing to attack residents from one village to another. When Yuki fell asleep, he met Ames again, and Ames told him that soon Yuki and his friends would face a very strong enemy, so only Yuki can save them. That made Yuki continue to practice swords with Pecorin, and sure enough, a gigantic shadow figure suddenly appeared that was rampaging in the middle of the city. Pecorin and the others tried hard to save the people there, while Carl only watched them from afar. It turned out that their attacks had no effect on the shadow monsters, and instead cornered Carl and Pecorin. That's where Pecorin becomes a shield for a cornered Carl. Pecorin ran out of strength after the giant monster brutally attacked him, and Labyrinth with his strength took them and the shadow monsters away from there. Then Kokoro herself and the others are inside the Landisol Palace. In the end, Pecorin told everything that she was the princess of the Andisol Kingdom who had been forgotten by many people, including her parents. It happened when Pecorin came home after practicing in nature, and for a moment the people there forgot that she was God Putri. Then the figure of Kaiser appears, who claims to be the princess of the Landisol Kingdom, and banishes Pecorin from the palace. That's why Pecorin always hugs Kokoro and the others, because he wants to enjoy the moment with them. Before Kokoro and the others forget about Pecorin, Kokoro hugs Pecorin and promises they will always be together. Carl, who knew about it, finally decided to defeat the shadow monster. On the one hand, Yuki, who is with the Labyrinth, who is the master, says that Yuki's power has a destructive effect on himself when Yuki uses it, one of which makes Yuki lose her memory. But it's that power that can save his friends from Kaiser and his men. On the one hand, the residents were very angry with the royal troops who arrived late, considering that only Pecorin and his party team had always saved them. Then at that moment came Christina, who added that something was wrong with the current kingdom. Carl, who was exhausted and resigned, was finally helped by Pecorin, and they fought together. On the one hand, Yuki decided to save his friends who were cornered. Finally, Yuki came and activated his power, which made them succeed in defeating the shadow monster. Residents who were worried about the safety of Pecorin and the others were suddenly very surprised to find that Pecorin had returned. All residents welcomed them with joy as heroes. Some time passed. Pecorin and the others were getting ready to carry out the next quest, and the anime film Princess Connect Redive was finished. Thank you and sayonara.